Welcome to Soundbreaker. On today's episode, we're talking to Daniel Cutler, who is adjunct music business instructor at SAE Institute. Daniel, glad to have you here, and thank you for joining us. For our listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Daniel Cutler. I'll keep it brief. I have about 20 odd years in the music industry across indie labels, major label, artist management, publishing, and most recently tech.
Many hats.
Yes,
Many hats. A lot of knowledge.
that's right.
Well, pleasure to have you. Let's dive into it. If you don't mind, take us back a bit in the past. Teenage years, how did your love and passion formulated that said, you know what, this is the path I'm going to carve and this is the path I'm going to take, being in music business? Was it family influenced, friends,
Yeah.
mom, dad, or just you listening to music or you being a musician?
Yeah. Well, maybe it was a mix of most of everything. I think I just gravitated towards, loving music at an early age. But for me, kind of like a pivotal sort of time that happened to me was I have, I guess, family. So I have I think I was like 12 years old, and my uncle had started a label out of LA. He had moved from Winnipeg, Jewish Winnipeg kid, moves to LA. And the short story is then starts a gangster rap empire.
Wow.
So it was called Priority Records. And
everybody knows Priority Records.
Okay, so Priority Records. So he signed, NWA, and so Eazy-E was part of that, and Ruthless, and Ice Cube, of course, Master P. The list goes on. And so I was about 12 years old, and we have a close family, and I would fly out to visit him, and he took me into the office. He would take me into the office when I flew down to LA. And I think when I first time I went to that office, there was maybe 5 people in it. And then I would go back and there would be, 20. And then a year later, 20 more. And then at one point, it was 2 floors of the building.
Wow.
And so for me, it was really cool because it gave me a first sort of like a really privileged seat to the record industry, to the music industry, to the birth of West Coast gangster rap, which obviously would become a dominant cultural force. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, this has to be it. Like I found it so fascinating to be in the office and to be around just super interesting people who were all there for music, and they were all making a living from music, and they all had really great personalities. And it was, and what I remember the most, I think, that attracted me was the energy in that building. It was just always on, and I was like, this has got to be it. Like this has got to be. People get paid to do this and to help these artists build careers, and so in a nutshell, that was really it. I had a really privileged seat, and it inspired me, and so I knew, and I had a mentor in my uncle who. What a great mentor to have. Priority went on. It was the biggest independent label of the 90s in the U.S. And so to have a guy like that actually taking my calls and shooting the shit with me and telling me what was going on was not only a privilege, but fascinating. And that's really what led me down the road. I knew from 12 or 13 that I wanted to be, if not the music industry, then in entertainment. And that's what I ended up doing.
That's one thing I tell you I love about Soundbreaker here and what I'm doing and the people I meet. Like, who would know? I wouldn't know. Exactly. Been in the business also for a few decades, the music business. But how would I know? That Priority Record, the guy who started it is your uncle. He influenced a 12-year-old kid. I'm like, you wouldn't. It's amazing. No, it's really intriguing.
That's the beauty of podcasts, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah. But not just that, just the stories that you come across. It's extremely inspiring for others.
Cool.
For me, for myself, I'm always intrigued by such things. That's why that's one of the first things I always ask in an interview.
Right.
Daniel, you were a product manager at Virgin Music before there was any iTunes or Spotify. What did you learn from that era during your time at Virgin Music, and what artists did you work with?
In
Yeah.
fact, so I started it at Virgin. I actually started at EMI in Vancouver, Canada. There was a, back then, times were good and the money was flowing, and they were selling so many CDs that they had branch offices across Canada. And so I was in the Vancouver EMI. I was there about a year. And then I applied for this role thinking I'd never get it, to be a product manager, which was a much larger job in the head office in Toronto, but it was for Virgin. EMI had Virgin was part of EMI at that point. So I applied for it. I got the gig. I ended up in Toronto, which was quite pivotal for me. And that was 1999, 2000. So that was actually pre-Napster. Like, I think Napster was founded in 99. We didn't really hear about it until 2001-ish. So when I look back now, it was a really, I've had quite an interesting, historical looking backwards. I got into the industry literally the year, I believe 99, 2000 was the peak of the height of recorded revenue in the history of the music industry. So times were good. And I got to cut my teeth in the old model, which was really just based on sales targets, supply, demand, shipping CDs. What's our target? Where's your budget? You have a new Lenny Kravitz album, or a new Daft Punk album, or a new whatever it was. We're going to give you $2 a unit. So it was all about ship date. The first day, right? The first week, you have to ship 100,000 units. We're going to give you $200,000. You need to allocate it and set up a plan. Go. So in a lot of ways, a lot easier, right, than it is today. You knew your goal, and the marketing marketing were somewhat limited, and in fact it was kind of hard to spend the money sometimes. I mean, that's how crazy does that sound? But I was like, what do I do with $200,000 to make to do a cool campaign and make everyone know about this release? So what I learned was the meat and potatoes of marketing. I had a great mentor named Robin Walters, who was one of the few females back then in that sort of position. She was the director of marketing at Virgin. She was amazing, and I learned the inner workings of a label and how all the departments are connected. And what I also learned was, I guess, and this will make sense later, but I learned that I was more interested in the smaller records and marketing them. I got more I was more rewarded by the success of small records that people didn't know about than I was of a large record like a Lenny Kravitz, let's say.
And these records, were they driven by indie labels, or they're just indie?
No, just like by Virgin. So Virgin being part of Virgin, of the global group. This is, now that I think about it, it was so cool and kind of crazy. But basically, as a product manager, every week or two there would be this almost like a binder, right? Imagine like pictures in a picture binder, but in the binder there'd be CDs, and the CDs would be from Virgin France, Virgin Italy, what was it called, Parlophone UK, all these stupid labels, and we could go through them as a marketing manager, and I would just go, oh, that looks interesting. Pull a CD out, listen to it, and be like, and based on nothing other than the music, right? Not even commercial potential. If I just fell in love with an album, I could take it once I established myself and had a little bit of taste credibility, and I could take it to Robin or the head of Virgin and say, listen, I'm freaking out over this album. Like, you don't know what it is. No one knows what it is. I would love for us to release it, and I will champion it. And you could do that because the good thing about sort of that era was there was enough revenue flowing that they could take chances on all different sorts of stuff, and it wasn't a big risk to them. So they'd say, listen, yeah, you want it. This one album that I remember is called The Beta Band. Incredible British group. They were already bigger there, but no one knew them in the UK. And super eclectic, lo-fi album, all different instrumentation, just really kind of out there, but also just so melodic and so beautiful. You could go to them and say, hey, can we release this, please? And they go, sure, but you have $5,000. I mean, like, no budget, right? So they wouldn't give you a huge budget, but you could. It takes resources and time, and you got to set up sales meetings, and then I would be like, okay, well, great, this is amazing. But what was the most fulfilling was I owned that project, and so it was up to me to
Yes.
then rally up the troops inside Virgin EMI, because you need their buy-in first to get them on board, the promo department and the radio guy and the sales department. And so I learned, how that kind of hustle works, that it starts inside before it goes outside. You get people excited about it. And that's a skill set that never goes out of style. And then I, get the chance to release this album and then bring the band into market and do a day of promo and do a live show that wouldn't have been there if had I not had a chance to do that. So what I realized through that process was I enjoy the small records, and the come up was much more fulfilling to me than just marketing a meat and potatoes Daft Punk album, if that makes sense.
How often you went through that binder, that CD,
album? I would go through it weekly. I mean, they
like
didn't
a photo
say yes.
album.
They didn't say yes all the time. You had to really make them believe in it. But I would say 4 or 5 of those releases over my 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned those binders, because I know when CDs came out, a lot of DJs, they were carrying them. Instead of carrying the cranes, it became trendy to actually carry these binders with all CDs.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Very nostalgic now.
Yes. You also co-founded Arts and Crafts, which played a huge role in the indie music world. And what inspired you to take the leap of starting your own label?
So Arts and Crafts was really about timing and being in the right place at the right time. And so when I started at Virgin, when I moved to Toronto, one of the first friendships I made at the label was with a guy named Jeffrey Remedios, who was the head of publicity, I believe, at that time, promo. He's now the president of Universal Music Canada. And so we became tight, and we were doing our thing. And for about 3 years, we went through a lot together. We put out a lot of albums. And then about a few years into the role, he came to me one day and he said, listen, man, I got this thing going on. I'm thinking of starting a label. There's a band called Broken Social Scene. They've independently released an album in Toronto so far, and the media was freaking out over this album, but no one else knew about it. But in Toronto, it was getting 5-star reviews, cover of magazines, etc. And Jeffrey was close, and he was helping to advise and mentor the lead singer of Broken Social Scene and one of the founders, Kevin Drew. And he said, listen, Kevin and I want to start this label, a management company. Do you want to be a part of it? You do marketing and sales. And Jeff would sort of run management and everything else, and financials and all that stuff. And I said, sure, let's go for it. I was young, and you didn't think about risk. You didn't think about job security. You just go for it. Right. So that's really how it started. And knowing that the first release was You Forgot It in People, which is now considered, one of the greatest releases of the 2000s. That helped, knowing that would be our first release. It went on to win a Juno here in Canada and then got international. What really broke was this Pitchfork review. It was like 9.3. Back then, Pitchfork could really move the needle. And
wow.
And so things blew up outside of Canada when that Pitchfork review hit. And then our next release was, I think, Feist, which was another amazing artist that was part of Broken Social Scene. And then the next release was Stars, which is an incredible pop indie band out of Montreal, and they were part of Broken Social Scene. And so it happened quick, and it was really an awesome ride. But most importantly, it put me next to the artists, closer to them. It was more of that grind and more of that, it was about the come up and helping artists get from, 0 to 1 or A to B.
Yes.
Which was most fulfilling to me. Yeah.
Well, in 2008, you started Runway Music, and you had Feist, and you had 123 by Feist. She was on the label, correct?
Yeah.
And which blew up to a massive hit, big commercial hit.
So,
go ahead.
Yep. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and it was also used for the launch, Feist 123 by Feist, who was also used as as the background music
Yeah.
for the commercial for the iPod Nano.
Yeah.
So how what was the impact of that kind of sync placement deal that you did?
That was well, it was huge. So just to clarify, so when I started Runaway Music with a guy named Matt Drouin, who at the time was managing Metric, I sort of ran day to day, and he was sort of behind the scenes. So when I left Runaway, I moved back to Vancouver. When I left Arts and Crafts in 2008ish, I moved back to Vancouver, and I wanted to start something new. And when I was at ANC, I was in charge of sync placements, publishing, but really we just focused on sync placements at the start. Sync placements were becoming a thing. Like they weren't really a thing in the early in like 99, 2000. There was something about the way TV was progressing and being, this label that had kind of this very popular sync friendly roster of artists, songwriters. So I was getting a lot of sync placements on like Grey's Anatomy, and I remember like the OC, The Office was cool. That was a good one. And so I took that knowledge and I really enjoyed doing it, and it connected me to the film world. And when I left Arts and Crafts, I decided, no, I'm going to start a boutique publishing company, an administration company. So didn't have the resources to buy people's publishing, but I knew that all the indie artists that were the most popular for sync placements, they all owned their publishing, because none of them back then would do publishing deals. They were, especially these super indie artists were kind of wary of selling their publishing because they were smart. And there's a bit of a, distrust factor with the major publishers and et cetera, et cetera. So the deals were, sometimes a bit predatory. Hey, give us all your songs for a small amount up front. So I started this publishing company, and the first songwriter I went to sign was an Arts and Crafts artist, because I knew she owned her publishing, and she was more under the radar. She was from Australia, and her name was Sally Seltman. She went by the name New Buffalo. That was her artist name at the time. And I said, I'm going to start with Sally. And I invited her. I told her what I was doing. And her manager said, sounds great. We we know what you did at Arts and Crafts, and we'd love to sign up.
Amazing.
And so that was great. But what happened very quickly was her manager emailed me maybe a couple of weeks later, said, hey, just so you know, just putting it on your radar that Sally wrote a song for Feist. It's called 1, 2, 3, 4. We sent it to her. She thinks it's, they're quite interested in it. Just letting you know. And I said, okay, well, great. I appreciate that. And Feist, was super credible and on her way. And I said, that's great. And then I was in LA not long after. I was at a showcase for Universal, and Jimmy Iovine was running the show, and I got to see him do his thing, sort of king of the castle there. And this guy was Martin Kirsenbaum, who had signed Feist within Universal to his independent label. I think it's called Cherry Tree Records. He pulls me over and he says, hey, Daniel, I just want you to know, we love this 1, 2, 3, 4 song. We're going to put it on the album. And not only are we going to put it on the album, we're going to put it as the first track.
Wow.
And we knew that album was going to get a big push because it was the first release on Universal and Cherry Tree. And she was a critic darling. So this was looking good. I said, this is excellent. That's amazing. And then I went back to Toronto. And I get an email from the label saying, hey, we want to make this the focus track, like go to radio with it and make a video for it. And I said, well, that sounds even better. Let's keep, this is amazing. And then it kind of went quiet. And then a couple of weeks later, timelines are a little fuzzy, but I think a few weeks later, I got quite a frantic message on my Nokia flip phone or whatever it was back then. This was circa 2008, 9.
Yeah.
So now you have to get back to us. 1, 2, 3, 4 they made an offer. Apple wants to use it in their global campaign or maybe it was North American. Sorry. I don't know that it was global, for the rollout of the iPod Nano, which was the first video iPod, right? This is important. And so I had to run back to my house. I had to get the fax machine out, print off the agreement, review it, sign off on it, fax it back. Wasn't long after Apple launched the iPod Nano commercial. And what we didn't realize was that the entire commercial, because it was the launch of the video Nano, all they did was they took like a 15 or 30-second clip of the video that existed, which was an amazing one-shot video. I forget the guy who directed it, but he was an incredible director. He
and they used it,
and they just literally just put it on the commercial, and they added a little touch. And so you had the video of Feist, you had this super catchy tune. Amazing. And I want, within days, people wanted to know, who is that? What is that song? It was just so catchy. And she took off. And so I got to ride that 1, 2, 3, 4. It went to, I think, top 3 in commercial radio across North America. And so that was a big one for us. We won a SOCAN award. It's our PRO here in Canada. And really put us on the map and extended my network of sync placements and music supervisors. Yeah, it was great.
An interesting, really exciting story. Amazing. Yeah. You transitioned from labels and publishing to tradable bytes, and must have been quite a shift. Oh, bits. I'm sorry.
Bits, yeah, that's okay.
Yes. Tradable bits, yes. Yeah. And that must have been, quite a shift. What drew you, Daniel, transitioning from labels and publishing to tradable bits must have been quite a shift for you. What drew you to focus on fan engagement platforms?
Well, I learned a lot. Not all of it was good. What drew me to it was I never worked at a tech company. Like more of a pure tech company. It was always on the recorded industry side, or the music business side. And so this opportunity came up at Tradable Bits. They were a tech company that has this really great platform that focuses on fan engagement and helping artists collect first-party data and zero-party data so that they can own their audience. And so, to me, that's sort of the key to everything these days. If you want to own your career and take control of your career and not have to depend on algorithms, right? Not bow to the mighty algorithm of Spotify, etc., who don't give you any data, by the way. So that's a whole nother podcast. So I wanted to get into tech. Long story short, I got this opportunity at Tradable Bits in business development. So over about a period of 10 months, I got to basically do discovery meetings with tons of labels and management companies across North America, some in the UK, and Europe, and sit down with them and just have a conversation about, hey guys, tell me about. We know the industry is awash in data, right? We hear about this all over the place, and that it's about data, using your data and analyzing your data, etc. And then I'd say, so what is your data situation? And we specialize in helping labels and management organize their data and then segment it and then activate it so you can really optimize your marketing. What are your challenges and where are the opportunities? And we would have that conversation. And what I found out quite quickly was that despite there being tons of data out there coming from all sorts of places, was that very, very few labels had an actual data strategy, and very few actually used their data to any great degree. And I was quite, I shouldn't have been as shocked, but I was. I was like, wow, this is crazy. On one hand, we have the optics that data is so instrumental to marketing and to finding your audience and to understanding who the customer is. The truth is, kind of the hidden truth is that there's so much data all over the place.
Yes.
That no one actually uses it because it's over here. You have your email over here and you have your Spotify over here who barely give you any data anyway. And then you have your spreadsheets over here and your chart metric over here and your, fan engagement platform over here. And there's no way to see it all.
Yes.
In the same place. And therefore you just don't do anything with it. At the most, what I found was there were a few labels that actually had a plan and had a
Hmm.
culture, had a data first culture, and that's amazing. But that's like 2%, let's say. The other companies, labels management mostly, really had email lists. And even those email lists were barely segmented.
So you're saying the struggles that the industry has with data, is it because it's spread
It's
everywhere? It's not
because it's
collectively.
the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yes.
That explains data, and so it's all over the place. It's work. It's a bit of work to organize it. You need a bit of a strategy, and I got the sense, not even the sense, I know that there most labels and managers are so busy focusing on what's next. They have so much going on, and it's such a fast pace. They're just not willing to like step back, take a few months, admit that they don't have a plan, and do something about it. And so, listen, I was only there 10 months because I couldn't I couldn't find I couldn't find people that were willing to invest the money and the resources into using the platform, and that's just where it's at. And I found it, to be honest, I found it disappointing because um, I know that there's meetings that take place where the head of marketing and the digital marketing manager and are pitching to the artists. Well, listen, we're professional marketers. We're in the music industry. Of course, we know what we're doing. That's why you want to sign with us. And it's just not the case. And actually, they're woefully behind most other creative industries in the centralizing, collecting, and using their data.
Any ideas on your end that you'd like to see it improved? Like, what would you do? What do you think the solution for all of this really?
I think I think it's a mindset shift. Like I think there probably just needs to be more awareness around it. Maybe a podcast like this will, me bringing up the conversation. It's not going to make me any friends, I don't think, but for forward, open-minded marketing managers and heads of marketing and heads of data. So the other thing that really sort of is crazy that I think that I learned is that like no label actually owns their audience, not one, from
Hmm.
major labels down to indies, and I met with them, right? So if Instagram were to go down tomorrow, 80% of artists would lose their audience, and they wouldn't know how to find them,
Wow.
and that's a huge insurance policy risk, if you ask me. And the thing is like the labels know this.
Are you saying the data's there, but nobody's collecting it? Nobody's doing
No,
anything with it?
because you don't own your Instagram audience. Meta owns
Yeah,
it.
correct.
And so, but artists like heavily lean on TikTok and Instagram to reach their audience through socials, right? Through social content. Now they only reach a fraction of their audience when they post. So already you're missing out on half your audience every time you want to get a message out. And you see what's happening with TikTok, and they might not be around, at least in their current state, in a year. Let's just say they go away. The artist doesn't get the emails. They don't know how to reach those TikTok followers that they've spent years building up as followers on their platform. They just go away. If
Mhm.
Instagram, same thing happens in Instagram, or they change their algorithm like they do often.
So what do they have to do? What labels should
What
do?
you need to do is you need to put a data strategy in place so that you can collect emails and phone numbers. Really, that's the start. That's the
And phone
starting point.
numbers. Yes.
But you need to actually focus on it and do it consistently. And then once you start doing that, um, you can start to segment that data and find out who is who in your audience. Like I was saying, I was talking like the best friends who manage Billie Eilish, and they are quite savvy when it comes to this kind of stuff. And we were just talking about, listen, I was trying to make the point that the Billie Eilish fan who discovers her on this new album is a very different person experiencing a different time in their life than someone who's been with her 10 years. And so does it make sense to put them in the same cluster and market to them with the same email offers? No, because they're at different points of the Billie Eilish journey. And what most labels are doing is they're talking to everyone in the same way.
Hmm.
And as a result, they're leaving money on the table, quite a lot of it, because they send one email every 2 weeks or one a month. There's some
Mm-hmm.
managers that I talk to because they're afraid of annoying people who aren't interested in what they're offering. Does that
Got
make
it.
sense?
Yes, yes.
When we know, and the data shows that you can send, if someone tells you, listen, I'm into Billie Eilish, I'm going to give you permission to email me. What I'm saying is I'm letting you contact me directly because I want information on Billie Eilish, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, and just don't screw up the relationship. Give me shit I don't want to know about, and don't spam me, and don't add me to other lists, and don't send me information on other artists. If you do that, you can send them 3 emails a week. Like the data clearly shows. And if they're not interested, they just won't open it or they're busy, but they won't be offended. Now, 3 emails a week, right? 12 a month versus one a month. And just do the math. Like if you add 3 or 4 offers for whatever you have to offer, special releases and etc., you are going to you're going to make more money. You're going to give people what they want, and you're going to free up the rest of your audience to make them just as many offers for what they're interested in. It's pretty straightforward, but no one is really doing it.
Very interesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of sense. Absolutely, a lot of sense. Can we talk about your latest venture? By the way, this data thing, definitely, it's another podcast, another interview.
It's a whole,
another
it's a whole
yes,
series.
yeah, very intriguing. Yes, he definitely opened up my eyes and ears to it. Slow management. That's your latest venture. Daniel, you're full of new ventures, new ideas, and new innovations. Tell us about your latest venture, Slow Management. What is it about, and what does the name imply?
So slow management, it's really it's kind of like a what's that word, like a bat, it's like a Batman signal, and it just reflects my current mindset and something that I find when I speak with developing artists and new artists all the time. Maybe a couple meetings, 2 or 3 a week, just to connect and stay connected to what's going on with them. And what I find is that, well, they're just so stressed out by the current pace of everything, not just music marketing, but their life, social media, the pace of culture just keeps accelerating. And so I want to offer a management company and a model where we say, hey, it's okay to just slow the fuck down, and let's take the time to figure out who you are as an artist, to figure out a strategy, a big picture strategy, where you want to be in 5-10 years. You need goalposts to head towards. Create a plan that sort of fits into the flow of your own existence, and not try to fit you into the flow of 14 posts a day on TikTok for fear of losing relevance, right? So it's just me bringing maybe some old school perspective that I have now as I get older, and a safe place for artists to develop. Obviously, I want you to be on social media, and you should be on TikTok, but let's do it with intention. And I'm here to just sort of take care of you and make you realize that it's okay to focus on quality over quantity. It's okay to say no. It's okay to, I actually am looking for an artist that wants to that is obviously super unique and all those things that you look for. But I would love to do a rollout where there was no DSPs, and there was very little or no social media, and figure out what that looks like. And I'm convinced that we will find a community of people that will be so captivated by this, especially if the music and the artist is really sincere about it, that it's almost a disruptor now. It's a disruptor to do this, right? Which is kind of weird and backwards. But I think there's something to slowing down, and I just think the current pace of everything is not sustainable, and it's not good for your mental health, which I'm a big advocate for. So that's the general. Does that make sense? That's the general idea behind Slow Management. Otherwise, it's a management company, and we're here to grow careers and help artists build.
Amazing, really amazing, very insightful, Dan. Really, very insightful. You previously taught the music business program at Nimbus Recording Arts, which was co-founded by Bob Isrin. And now you teach at SAE Institute. What do you find most rewarding about teaching the next generation of the music industry professionals?
What I love is figuring out how to get across the information that these students who are really not interested in the music industry, I'll be interested, Bob, they're there at the school to learn how to become producers, engineers, and self-producing artists. Part of the package in order to get their 1-year degree or their 9-month degree, whatever it is they have to learn the music, the nuts and bolts of the music industry. And that's where I come in. So I don't know, 90% of them come into the beginning of the course just not interested. And I didn't realize that this would be the case when I started. And then I was like, well, this is interesting. They're actually like, because I just think, oh, everyone's in, like, I was so into it from a young age. Everyone must, be like, want to know how the industry works if you're going to be an artist these days. Nope, not. It's like really not the case. And I think I've taught over 120, like, put through the full year at this point. And I would say that's the case for 80% of them. They just, first class, they don't really even want to be there. So my challenge is how do I first just get them invested in the idea that they should probably pay attention and want to be here and keep their eyes open to what I'm saying. That to me has been like super cool to figure out, because every class, so let's say you run a 3-month class that I'm doing on marketing management. Well, I wrote the class and I'll deliver it. I can tell in real time what is connecting during class. You just see the eyes open and they go, oh, well, that's relevant to me. And then I make that mental note and I make sure to like expand on that, or maybe say it off the top the next 3-month class. And by the end of a year or two, I've optimized these classes so that the entire 3-hour class, every class, is actually shit they're interested in, and they're actually learning. And to me, and does that make sense? And so to me, that's been super rewarding. It also keeps me right in the middle of everything, like at a very street level. Let's say these are 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds that want a career in music, and I learn, and so it keeps me, I guess, young and like not. I look like less of a fool talking to other 20-year-olds or my 18-year-old kid, because I pick up on, Gen Z references, or what moves culture for them, what platforms, what artists. I'm constantly absorbing for myself. And then I can apply that to slow management, right? I can apply this. And so it's a loop that I love. So that all sounds very self-serving, which it is, but I do enjoy, again, it's a bit of a come up when you see these kids by the end of hopefully not all of them, but let's say 50 to 75% of them are actually genuinely grateful for the class. And we continue on relationships. I see some of them go on and are making moves. And once in a while, they'll even thank me for it, which is nice.
This is, yes. I mean, you're giving back something really great. Yeah. You gain all of this. You gain so much experience and knowledge being in the business for that long.
Yeah, exactly.
Daniel, how do you see the role of technology evolving in the music industry over the next decade, especially in the terms of artist development and fan engagement?
That's a tough one. I mean, there's so much going on. If I knew that, I'd probably retire early. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm not really a fan of all technology. I don't think the world needs another fan engagement platform. I find them more of a distraction. So I'm not sure that advancing technology is even such a positive in the big picture, and that's part of why I'm starting Slow Management. One thing I found really interesting, so I'll talk about someone who's way more in tune with this, that's smarter than me around this topic, is will.i.am. I was at Canadian Music Week maybe about a few weeks ago, and he was on a panel. He was streamed in, but so he wasn't live, but it was him, Roger Niles, and who's the head of Merck something, is the head of Hypnosis, the publishing fund. Anyway, and Will I Am, who's super on top of the AI stuff, and he's doing so much like innovative partnering, and he's a really great mind. And he was basically made the point there. He thinks like there is now, and it's just going to keep going that way, like another vertical in music. So you have like, let's say you have the industry, you have the artists, right, which is the output, and then he was saying, and now you have the customers. But the next evolution, what's happening right now, is the customers, the fans, are actually becoming they get to be part of the creative process, and they also are becoming like layback artists. An artist, so what he was saying was, which I thought, yeah, I think you're right, is like, not far from now, an artist will release a song. Great, they work on the song, and that's like the genesis, let's say, of there's a word for it. It's like the original version of the song. Yeah. And then once it's released, the artist no longer really owns it. Me, if I'm 18 years old and I'm in my bedroom and I'm like, I've just broke up with my girl, he uses reference, and like, I just broke up with my girlfriend, or I cheated on my girlfriend, or she cheated on me, or whatever, and I have all these feelings and thoughts. Well, I'm going to pull up, the AI platform. I'm going to take the song that I already love, and I'm just going to like add my own feelings into it, and then I'm going to hit the button, and it's going to create that same song, but it's going to be all about my feelings and speaking to me, and it makes me, now the song is mine, and that's a whole nother level to this game, and I think it's fascinating. I don't know if it's good or bad, to be honest. So in terms of fan engagement, think about fan engagement. Is there a higher level of fan engagement, in a sense, than actually taking ownership of a song and being able to make it yours, like quite literally? That's interesting to me. So I love the space. I'm super obsessed with following AI. I use it sparingly, but it's what a time to be alive.
Yeah, absolutely. We enter into a new era, and definitely transforming the whole music industry that we knew about.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, sure. Fascinating.
Absolutely. What advice would you give someone just starting in the music business after, or should we call it the music tech business now? It's no longer just the music business. It's got to be the music. You got to be tech savvy just to be involved in the music business these days. Yeah. They're going to watch this great, insightful interview, and they're going to be inspired by your stories to like, hey, I want to carve my own path also in the music business. What advice do you have for them?
Well, the one piece of advice I like is like, don't take advice. But that's a bit of a cop-out, because I do think advice is important. I certainly look to it a lot. I would say a couple things. There's a quote I love that I recently see a lot on LinkedIn, which is humiliation is the cost of entry. And I love that. And a lot of like some significant entrepreneurs that I respect are putting it out there. And basically the point is, I think, which you can apply to is like, one thing I see is like, because the younger generation is used to getting things right away, and they have a short sort of attention span. They want things to happen quickly, and they think that they should figure shit out quickly. And not all of them, but a lot of them don't want. They're like, the paradox is they're all over social media, but when it comes time to do it, and because you do need to do it in order to stand out, they are afraid of failing, or afraid of being judged, or afraid of it not working, or whatever. It usually boils down to judgment. And I'm just here to say, guys, the cost of entry is being humiliated. And I say that sort of jokingly. You don't have to be humiliated, but speak to any entrepreneur, anyone from Mark Zuckerberg down to whoever you choose. You only hear about success stories when they succeed. After they succeed, they fail constantly before that, but they're not afraid to fail. Every failure, or it's not even like you have to fail, but it just might not connect. So there's the rejection of putting work into a post that you spent a couple days ideating. You put it out there and nothing, right? And instead of being rejected by this, remember, the cost of getting to where you want to be is humiliation. So it might feel humiliating, but you're doing the right thing because you'll learn from that. and you'll do the next piece of content a little differently. Maybe it's a different hashtag. Maybe it's the way you shoot it. Who knows? But now more than ever, you figure things out as you go, and it's so important. And the other thing I'll say is, when it comes to social media, especially, guys, no one, like, you can't really lose on like TikTok, because if you do a video and no one likes it or it doesn't click, no one sees it. That's it. They only see the ones that work. And so it's a zero risk game doing a TikTok or social media, because the things that work for you work and they continue to scale, and the things that don't, no one sees. And trust me, the things that do work, no one remembers them, 5 days later or 5 hours later. You need to do it consistently. Consistency is the other main theme I'd like to offer here. This is not a game you're gonna get to where you want to get by dipping your toes in and out over time. You need to show up every day. You need to fail every day, until you sort of reach a bit of a tipping point and get to the next level, right? So things happen slowly, and then they happen all at once, and then they happen slowly, and then they happen all at once. You don't see the carrot growing underneath the ground, is a reference I like to use, for weeks and months, until it's finally there. So you may think nothing's happening, but you're growing and you're building and you're learning. And so just start, just do it. That's, I guess, at the end of the day, and you'll learn.
What a great advice. What a great advice. Daniel, before we wrap up this interesting discussion, you have a lot to say, that's for sure. And yes, I'm sure a lot of our viewers and our listeners at Soundbreaker, they'll find it extremely beneficial and informative. Is there anything you'd like to mention, to share with us? Anything upcoming, a project you're working on that everybody should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, so not mine, but I think maybe I'll draw attention to a really cool initiative that is happening out of New York.
Okay.
It's called The Playground, and it's started by the team at Big Ass Kids, it's called. And like, in a nutshell,
The Playground.
Yeah, it's called The Playground, if you want to find it. And essentially what they're doing, it's this incredible platform / community where they are connecting vetted music industry professionals with artists, brands, teams who require the professional expertise of those who know how the music industry works, and how to build careers, and how to use music to help, further your business interests. There's a lot of people out of business in the last, or that lost work, super talented people in the last few years, to be honest, as the music industry changes. But a platform like this, it connects you with them in a really, in a way that I haven't seen before. It's super professional. And so I would just urge artists, artist teams, even labels, management companies, to check it out. And I'm on there as someone you can work with. But everyone from graphic designers to content creators to, social media influencer specialists to marketing managers, like all over. And once you get in there, there's webinars, and there's chat groups, and there's like, everything's about connecting and learning and sharing resources instead of gatekeeping, which we all know is
very big in our business.
The worst things about the music industry.
Yes, amazing. The Playground.
Play.ground.
Yeah. The Play.ground.
I don't even know that. I think it's Play.ground. If you just Google that, I think you'll probably find it eventually.
We definitely will. I'm sure a lot of our listeners and viewers at Soundbreaker as well. Well, again, I want to say thank you for joining us today, Daniel. It was really informative and insightful. This concludes today's episode of Soundbreaker. Please make sure to follow us on socials. Stay tuned for our next episode, and see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
My pleasure, my friend. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the Soundbreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.